Hello, everyone. I was expecting Blood Buildup to become a meta based on the numbers I was seeing through my own tests. I was also half expecting for the build guides to shift a little bit, if you will. They originally were recommending swords and spells, but now it seems that they've kind of gone the opposite direction now, and where they're going for swords and blood buildup. I'm going to be real with you all. I don't understand the hard on for swords in Elden Ring. I'm going to go through all of that with you. I want to show you why I think these build guides are making mistakes using in game information and mechanics. So let's go and start with the basics. Okay, I'm on the wrong page, so hold on. Okay, there we go. Okay, so in my prior recordings, I was saying that the most versatile damage types are going to be Pierce, Strike, and Lightning damage. You can notice that right here in the wiki, why I'm saying that. Look at all the bonus damages you get for utilizing those three damage types. Now take that and compare it to standard damage. Standard damage is what swords are, for the most part. Standard damage has no bonuses or weaknesses. So you can see where these three damage types are getting a bit of a head start on damage in comparison to standard. The other thing to keep in mind is something I was trying to say in my prior recordings. You have 3 quick slots on your left and right arms. It doesn't make sense to me to purely go swords. What makes more sense is having additional weapons in those quick slots so that you can switch around as needed pending the enemy type. I gave 2 good examples, which is Morningstar and either the Short Spear and Partisan. The 2 spears are obviously pierce damage, and then the Morningstar is strike damage. But yeah, so you can definitely see that for yourself. I'll let you do all the reading. Let's move into the stats and how it relates to the blood buildup meta. Okay, so on a lot of these blood buildup guides, they're saying to use the Ashes of War that cause blood buildup, but there is a big problem here, and that is it uses Arcane Scaling. So while Arcane Scaling can work for weapon damage, it's not really beneficial beyond the damage, and I want to show you why. Okay, so you'll notice that Arcane, both in game and of course on this wiki, specifically states that it helps with certain incantations, discoveries, and well, vitality. That's about the only one that matters out of those two. Vitality is your resistance to instant death. So yes, that's good, but it's Elden Ring. If a monster wants you dead, it's going to kill you. That's just Elden Ring for you. There is absolutely no mercy given in this game. So your resistance to instant death might not be as valuable in the worst case scenarios. So, what actually makes more sense to scale is dexterity. Dexterity is going to be much better than strength, and there's a very good reason for that. Because if you look under dexterity, it specifically states it helps with casting time and reduces the chance for you to get knocked off your horse. Mounted combat in Elden Ring is very, very good for certain bosses. If you can master mounted combat, you can avoid hits so much better than if you were to try to dodge roll it, or for that matter, try to block it with a shield. Those two alone will do good for certain circumstances, but mounted combat can avoid a whole lot more of a mess than they can. Now, if strength was scaling your equipment load, then that would actually be more valuable than it is now and would be a consideration, but because it doesn't, and that is a stat related to endurance, then really there's not much of a point to do strength other than a specific build, or if you were to do something else. But either way, moving on. Let's see. We need go back to the Ashes of War page. Okay. Okay, so I need to return to Ashes of War real quickly. So I need to return to what I was mentioning with the prior recordings. In my builds, the ones that was using the Morning Star and Spear, I was saying to put the Lightning Ash of War on the Spear because that would help it punch through armored enemies, and of course would help with other things. I was saying to leave the Morning Star alone because Kick is actually, well, good because of the enemies that have shields, but you could also do it too if you wanted to put Lightning Ash of War on it. So the reason I was saying that is because you'll notice that Lightning Ash of War is Dexterity Scaling. Now, I will give you an alternative here because of some tests that I've ran, and also give you another alternative. But let me scroll up. Okay. So you'll notice here's another Ash of War that causes Dexterity Scaling, and that's the Kane Ash of War. Now, under the Kane Ash of War category, there's one particular Ash of War I want to point out, and that's Quickstep. So, Quickstep is a lateral movement rather than directional. So in the case of the dodge roll, you would dodge in a direction. Well, dodge roll in a direction, but Quickstep either does a quick step to the left or right of a target that you have locked onto. So in some ways, Quickstep is actually better than dodge roll because it gets you out of the way better than a dodge roll would. Somebody would have to do some testing on it because I'm afraid that I don't really have the time to devote to fully testing it, but I would imagine Quickstep is friendlier when it comes to iframes or things of that nature, because it's based on a skill rather than based on a whole bunch of factors. But either way, this would be another good response because of the dexterity scaling. So I just wanted to point these two out to show you exactly why dexterity scaling is so good, beyond the fact that it helps with horse balancing and cast speed. It's also because of these Ashes of War. So it really depends on how you handle the builds, but either way, I need to move on to the next topic. Let's see. Oops, there we go. Okay. Related to Ashes of War, I need to also talk about shields, as there's been new information since I've done my recordings. My builds recommendations are still effective if you want to do it that way. In those prior recordings, I was saying that you could use the Barricade Shield Ash of War or the Vow of the Indomitable for no-hit runs. They require a medium or light shield, if my memory's correct, which means you can't use a Great Shield with them. Now, Barricade Shield makes it so that the stamina cost is significantly reduced when blocking. Vow of the Indomitable makes you invulnerable for a very small window. So either can work, but since then, I have learned some new things through my own testing, and of course, this wiki page got a massive update since I was last doing a recording for it. So, there are a couple of great shields with a very high boost guard. Boost guard's that stat that lowers the stamina cost when blocking. So you'll notice I'm hovering over this one, which is the Distinguished Great Shield. Distinguished Great Shield has 68 boost guard base, which is insane. However, there are some others that do have a higher boost guard. It's just that either they take more strength, have higher weights, or something. So there's a negative that's a drawback to making that good. So I would say the 3 great shields to look at if you wanted to do an alternative to the barricade shield. Ideology would be to look at the Distinguished Great Shield, Halictree, Crest Great Shield, and where's the other one? Oh, Golden Great Shield. I'd say look at those 3. Now, in order for these 3 to be effective, it needs to be paired with a Talisman. Let me tab over to that. Okay. So, for you to get the absolute lowest stamina cost, you would have to pair these with the Talisman Great Shield. Now, the reason I mention this as being an alternative is because there are some people who may struggle to remember to keep the barricade or Vow of the Indomitable up. So if that's the case, you can certainly do this with a great shield, and then you wouldn't have to think about it. All you'd have to think about is blocking. But there is a drawback to doing this method. I just want to show you real quickly. The Talisman slot does encompass a lot of great benefits. And depending on your build, you may lose out on those benefits. So there is one example right below it, and that is the Canvas Talisman. It took me a minute to locate where it was on the page. That one increases the potency of incantations. It's not the only talisman that does it. There's another one that increases the potency of incantations. So if you are running a hybrid faith build, like the one I recommended, that could certainly help with more of the spellcasting side. But if you're more of a combat build, like one of the other builds I've recommended, then you're losing out on something like the Pearl thing. Let me show you real quickly. Let's see, it should be... Yep, there it is. Okay, Pearl Drake Talisman. So the way to think of this talisman is it's an elemental resistance pendant, meaning it encompasses a bunch of resistances other than physical. Obviously, it's going to give you less resistances than the more dedicated ones, because there's some talismans that say greatly increases fire resistance, greatly increases lightning resistance, etc. Those will for sure have a higher resistance than Pearl Drake, but Pearl Drake encompasses all of them at once. So in theory, it's actually more beneficial because it requires less memory, because then you don't have to remember to switch talismans per enemy and things like that. You just leave it on and call it a day. But either way, I just wanted to really quickly point these out because all the weapons we're about to go over are going to involve either a dual wield or shield build, though I would recommend doing shield build with Quickstep or something else, Lightning Ash of War or something. But anyways, let's go and talk about that now. Okay. So here is all of your weapon categories. Out of the ones that that I'm aware of, or at least can remember at this point, I will admit that I kind of got sloppy and I should have pulled up everything in tabs, but I failed to do that before starting the recording, so do excuse me. So I'm going to have to go from memory here, but if my memory is correct, out of the weapons that have passive bleed buildup, that's going to be Morningstar, Flail, certain claws, the Peeler thing, Uchi Katana, and Katana, if my memory is correct. If memory serves well, I think it's the Peeler that's physical damage and fire damage. If I'm correct with that, that's going to be a better alternative than the Uchi Katana and Katana because of the fact that it has fire damage, because it's physical and fire damage, I think, if it's the one I'm thinking of. Fire damage is going to be a lot better than standard damage, although, again, like I previously stated earlier, it's not going to be as versatile as Lightning Strike or Pierce, but it's still a step in the right direction towards being efficient. So I will compromise on that one and say, look, if I can't get you all off this sword hard on, I'm okay with saying just take that weapon. But ideally, you would want to run Morningstar and or the Flail. I did some further testing with the flail, and I actually think it has better DPS than the Morningstar, simply because it has that Ash of War that's called Spinning Strike. If you can rev that up, it can do damage like a little machine gun. But either way, that or the Morningstar is a perfectly acceptable weapon for blood buildup, and it would certainly make you pretty versatile. You can also do spears with blood buildup, and I'll get into that right now. So let's talk about that. Okay. Under the Faith Incantations, there is an ornament called Bloodflame. This particular ornament does cause blood buildup. So this is actually a way to apply additional blood buildup stacks and or apply blood buildup to weapons that don't normally have it, like the spear. The spear is really good in this game because it does make it much easier to hit enemies at a distance. So if you are trying to dance around an enemy using Quickstep, this is the easier way to handle it. Well, at least I'm just using this as an analogy. You don't have to do it. Let me go ahead and rephrase it that way. But another good use case of spears is if you're doing mounted combat. If you're doing mounted combat, it's going to be a nightmare trying to do with swords. Spears, on the other hand, make it super easy. So like I was mentioning earlier, mounted combat is really good. And the way you can master it easier is by using spears. Now, unfortunately, in this particular scenario, you would have to do the Bloodflame Armament before mounting to make that function happen if you were using it in that particular scenario. But either way, this is a much better than doing it with the Blood Ash of War because, like I said, it changes the scaling and the bonuses that you're receiving. So yeah, I just wanted you to be aware of that. Now, to finish off this recording, I just want to quickly go over the builds that I had put forth for people to try and incorporate some of the newer stuff so that if you wanted to change things around, you could. Okay, so build one I recommended was Faith. Hybrid build. So in my particular case, I was only using Faith just for the ornaments and the heals. I was not casting lightning bolts or anything. I was reserving all my mana specific to healing and ornaments. I was using the Morningstar and Spear. Well, Partisan, I should say. Although you can use the short spear, like I said. I still have to do more testing with that. But either way, a spear and a Morningstar. That's what I was using with Bloodflame. In addition to that, I was also using the Brass Shield. Because at the time, I knew that the Barricade and Vow of the Indomitable would only work on medium or light shields. So obviously, I did that. This was before I knew about the Great Shield. So if you want to change that build to the Great Shield and the Talisman, you can do that. And the same goes for build number 2. Build number 2 is my more pure combat build. In that build, I was saying to run Morningstar, Spear, and Bow. Not a great bow or a short bow, but a normal bow. So that's going to be like Horn Bow and Long Bow. Those are the kind of bows I'm referring to. Build 3 was kind of a compromise to the whole sword thing. I recognize that's pretty hard to get people off of these sword builds. So I was like, well, if I can't get you off these sword builds, let me try seeing if I can get you to use a halberd. Because halberds are standard damage as well, just like swords, so you're not really getting any bonuses. But the one major change that you're making is going to be that reach. Because you have further reach, kind of like the spear, it not only makes mounted combat easier, but it also makes it much easier to dodge and hit enemies. Because of that extra reach, it ensures less of a mischance. So in that particular scenario, you could, I would just run it without a shield. I would just use both of your hands to wield the halberd and then switch off to the bow, because I did recommend using a bow with that. That would certainly help the build. With the builds that are running the bow, I just want to quickly point out where you would use that. Using a bow on any high HP pool enemy is going to take too many arrows and too much of a cost. Yes, bows are going to be, well, I should say arrows. Arrows are going to be much cheaper than some of the other ammunition types, but it's still a cost at the end of the day to use only that on the high HP pool enemies. In addition to that, your bows don't work with certain Ashes of War, so it might be harder to scale them, which means you're probably not going to do, well, I mean, depending on which weapon you're using, and comparing that to whatever bow you're using, it might not do as much damage as the melee weapon. And if that's the scenario that you're running into, only use the bow for trash enemies, meaning low HP pool enemies. Because what you want to do is clear out the trash enemies, reserve your HP for the higher HP pool enemies, is more or less the logic you have to apply there. So I just wanted to quickly get that all out there. There's the 3 builds that I would personally recommend. That's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.